Bees, do be careful because it's the entrance side that they often get more protective, but it's largely genetics that will determine whether they are aggressive or protective, if you like. I'm comfortable here because I know this hive and I know my bees, but if they started to hassle me, I'd be putting my veil on too. So to harvest honey, what we've got here in the bottom of the hive is just standard wood and wax frames, and in the top we have our Flow Hive invention frames, which you can see here. Now if you come and have a look at the back, you can see that there is some honey in these cells, but there's also bits missing showing that the bees are a little bit hungry. So we'll just harvest perhaps this one frame today and leave the rest for the bees. The flowers have stopped producing nectar and the bees haven't got as much forage to go and get to produce honey at the moment. So we don't want to take all their honey away. So how are we going? We've got a few technical difficulties, or we're good?
No, we're rock and roll.
Thanks for joining us. If you've got questions, put it in the comments and we'll get to answering those shortly. Trace will read them out. That's the familiar voice you'll hear if you call our support line, and we'll try and do our best to answer them as we go. So to harvest honey, what we do is we take off this little cap up here, and all we're going to do is insert this little tube in the bottom, like that. And then the jar goes underneath. Now it's very quick compared to the conventional ways of harvesting honey. Can I, Anna, can I get a volunteer? So what we're going to do is insert this key. Now it's often easier to do it a little bit at a time, but you're just going to turn that to a 90-degree angle. And what that does, yep, that's it, go for it. Turn it, give it some muscle, and that's going to create channels inside the comb, which is my father and I's invention. Yep. Turn it, you won't break it, that's it, good. And what that's done is it's moved every cell line like this, which creates the pathway. You can go ahead and harvest more of the frame, or you can harvest half the frame if you like, but it's just like that. Will give you the all of this frame we're seeing here. If you come around here, you can see the bees are on the surface of the comb, and they haven't noticed so far that the honey is draining out from beneath their feet, which you can just see coming down the tube now. So that's what created all the fuss in the world with harvesting honey in this really different new way. And now we've been in the world for almost 11 years, and we've got beehives in 130 different countries. And you can try that honey if you want to. Yum. You might have to lift your veil though. It's just such a beautiful thing. That's it. Yeah, that's good honey. I'm just trying to detect the flavours, because it's often a great thing to be able to work out what was flowering and what the bees were foraging on when they created this honey. And what I'm tasting there is actually the privet, which was flowering in the springtime. But I'm getting a second colour coming in, showing that this frame is actually a mixed honey. Sometimes if there's a big flowering of one thing, you'll get all of that flowering, all of that flavour in the frame, and other times it can even be a mix within one frame. But one thing we really love doing is isolating each frame, because you get a different flavour from this frame compared to this one, compared to this one. And then, because we've harvested this frame now, tomorrow they'll start filling it with whatever's flowering now. So you get this checkerboarding and all of these different flavours and colours of honey from the one hive, which to me is incredible, because I love honey and I love sharing the different flavours, and it's become this amazing benefit of the Flow Hive we didn't actually expect in the beginning. We didn't set out to invent a system to isolate flavours, but it has become this, I guess, side benefit, which is amazing, because on your table you've got all of these different colours and flavours of honey, and they tell a story of what's going on around in the environment. Okay, somebody is watching. Okay, this is a test. You need to swap the jar. Ready, set, go. Well done. All right, 9 out of 10 there. Got a little bit on the back. So, seeing as Antonio, you've got good observation there, it can be your job to make sure that the honey jars don't overflow. Okay. So, right in the window, you can see that is the frame that we're harvesting. And see how it's getting light at the top now. That's the honey draining down and out of the hive. And look at it absolutely pouring out. It's such a beautiful and kind of mesmerizing thing to just watch that honey pouring right out into the jar. If you've got questions, put it in the comments. Have you got any questions coming in, Trace?
Yeah, great. And welcome, Paul, to all of your family. And someone's actually just noticed that most of you have just got your veils on. And so the question is from Deepak, is do bees only bite on faces? And is that why you're only wearing hats and veils?
It is true. So the most uncomfortable place to be bitten is, or stung, we say, is the face. It tends to be where it might swell. A sting on the hand, certainly for me, isn't usually a problem. But the reason why we aren't in full bee suits today is because I know these bees. I'm pretty sure that they're not going to be territorial or aggressive today. But if I notice them start to be, then I've got my bee suit handy and we can walk away and then protect ourselves better with a full bee suit. If you're new to beekeeping, wear a good protective bee suit and your gloves. Give yourself a gentle start in beekeeping. There's nothing we need to prove. You don't need to be some heroic naked beekeeper. You put your bee suit on and protect yourself while you just learn about your bees and learn when they're more territorial and when they're not.
Fantastic. So Jackie wants to know, how can you clean the flow frames if they get a bit clogged or a bit stuck?
Okay, so the flow frames, let's just run through a few things about them. So this is our invention here, and if the frames are kept on the hive, generally that's not actually a bee, that is a March fly.
No, it's not a bee.
That's not a bee. They're annoying flies. They also get called horse flies. They actually do suck your blood. Now, here is the trough area, and sometimes you do need to clean this area before harvesting because some muck can build up. I rarely ever do, but occasionally, for whatever reason, maybe you left that cap off, or maybe the frame wasn't in use by the bees for a while and some debris built up there that fell through the open parts or something, and that can be cleaned simply by putting a dishcloth, a nice thin one, on here, wet it and clean it like that. So that's one piece of cleaning we do. And the other one is if there's a little bit of honey buildup in here, sometimes just turning this cap will break what we call the leak back point seal. You can see a little gap between the yellow part and the clear part, and that's on purpose so that any honey that does seep into there while the bees are filling or after harvesting goes back to the bees rather than building up. But bees will be bees and they'll block up that little part there. We have just taken out that cap and the bees, you can already see their tongues ripping into that honey, cleaning it up. If we got a macro, we would be able to see their feathery like tongues mopping up that honey. That's another little thing, but generally the bees keep them pretty good when they're on the hive. Having said that, after about 5 to now 11 years, we're finding that the frames could do with a good clean. And the reason why is the bees coat all of the parts of the flow frame in wax and sometimes propolis as well. So they do build up a real waxy coating. And if it hasn't been used for a while, especially, then you may find that it's hard to operate the mechanism. So that may be what you're referring to, or if you've left your flow frames out, mildew and things might build up on them, and it may be time to give them a clean. So we're finding after 5 years or more of use, taking them out of the hive, perhaps after harvest, laying them down on a flat surface and using a pressure washer to blast a lot of the wax off will give them a new lease in life. Please don't throw them away. We want them to last as long as possible. If you use a hot water service connected to your pressure washer, it'll work even better, just to blast that wax away. Let them dry in the shade and put them back in the hive. If you pay special attention to this space here, so the cell lines on either side, and have them in open position, harvesting position while you're washing it, so the water can really wash down those cell lines and blast down the lines, you can get back to a reasonably good looking end plate view as well, which is a really useful view to look into the hive and see what the bees are doing and even watch them filling the cells with their tongues. Any more questions?
Yes, Ed, obviously, especially in Australia at the moment, we're having some really, really hot weather. And so the question is, does the hot weather affect how much the bees can go out and forage?
Now, bees are amazing at their climatic control. So their air conditioning power is incredible. You'll see in hot weather a lot of bees going to collect water, and the reason they do that is they bring that water back to the hive, they fan it, and they use evaporative cooling to actually cool the hive, because they need to keep the babies down here, the brood nest, at just below our body temperature. About 35 or 36 degrees C is the temperature that they need to keep the brood nest for the brood to survive. So they can very accurately control the temperature by either fanning drops of water, or they can vibrate themselves in a kind of shivering motion which warms up the hive, and they're called heater bees. So they're able to heat and they're able to cool, which is an incredible function, and it's mind-blowing in a way, the level of accuracy they can get with both temperature and humidity down here in the brood box to keep the brood box nice and at the right temperature for the babies. So, what you'll find on really hot days is bees going to collect water, and if you don't have a water source nearby, you can assist them by making a water feeder. And a little something like this, even as simple as this, will be a great assistance for them. If you just have a tub of water there, what you find is it's harder for them to drink because they can get stuck sort of swimming around and drown in the water. They prefer to drink off something they can stand on. So either they like to suck off mud, or wet fabric is good, or a simple one you can build is just some stones in a tray, put it under a dripping tap, and the bees will go there to drink. Now, if you add a pinch of salt, that will make it even more enticing, because bees, like us, need minerals, and I prefer slightly salty water over water that is just without the salt. Another thing you can do on a real hot day, and we've had some big heat waves here in Australia, not where we are, it's cool today, but down here we have our ventilation control, which will be a great help for your bees. Conventional beehives often don't have anything like this, so this is an added feature of our flow hive, where if you put the vents up, air can flow through those vents and up above this tray, through a screen bottom board and up into the hive. You can close that off in the cooler times by turning it up the other way. You can put it up that way for more ventilation, or if it's really hot, heat wave, pull the tray out altogether, give your hive maximum ventilation, and it should be fine even in the full sun in a heat wave. You will find a lot of bees bearding out the front and even covering the whole surface of the front of the hive. That is normal when it gets hot. They're clearing out to allow ventilation pathways inside the hive, and removing that tray will just assist that even further. Any more questions?
Fantastic, Seeds. Look, I think we lost Facebook for a minute, but I think we're back up. So if you were on Facebook, hopefully you can hear us now, and we're back up and running, thanks to Ben. Now the question from the ultimate farm wife, I just had to say that because I wonder what the ultimate farm wife is from Western New South Wales, and it's really hot there and their bees keep building comb between the brood box frames. Just wondering, how do I stop that?
Comb between the brood box frames.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like you're experiencing, if I'm hearing your question correctly, you've got your brood frames in here, which are wooden frames, and you might be going with no foundation, which is what we like to do here, just letting the bees draw the comb perfectly naturally. But it sounds like they're not building it in the frame, they're building it between them. So it can be annoying when that happens, and what you might need to do is use some rubber band, well, depending on how far out of line it is. Let's say they're just drifting off one frame to the next, you can often get your hive tool and just push it back on line. Once you get a few straight frames, the bees will then follow suit with the others because they'll use the first ones that are straight as a guide. Now, if you find that the bees have gone completely sideways or completely off the frames, then what you'll need to do is basically cut out the good sections of brood, use some rubber bands that can go right around the frame to hold that sections of brood comb in line in the correct orientation in the center of the frame, and the bees will then connect it in place, and once they have a few frames like that, they then should follow suit. So hopefully that answers your question. Let us know if it doesn't. If you've got a whole lot of random honeycomb, then just take that away. Don't bother trying to save that, just let them draw new comb, hopefully straight on the comb guides next time.
Great, Seeds. And everyone's noticing we've obviously got a lot of noise from the cicadas going off here. Such an Australian sound you're probably listening to at the moment.
It is. We totally get used to it to the point where we don't even hear it. But you listen back to a recording and you're like, what's that electronic kind of buzz? And it drives Ben, who's holding the camera, completely mad in post-editing.
Seda, we often get this question also when you're extracting with the flow frames. Does it hurt the bees when you crack those flow frames?
Okay, that's a great question, and something that my father and I spent a lot of time working on, because obviously we wanted an easy way to harvest, but we also wanted it gentle on the bees. This invention came from really not liking the conventional way. Hot, sticky, messy, hard work, very labour intensive. You've got bees everywhere, you're squashing lots of them, you're rolling bees as you pull the frames out. All of that, if you're trying to go quickly, there's nothing you can do to really limit a lot of bees getting squashed. So we wanted to design a way that was as gentle as possible, and this is what we came up with. And one of the major pieces of innovation, and we have a whole patent around it, is at first we came up with this, which allowed the honey to flow down, every cell splitting in half, right? But what we found is if you had a patch of comb, have a look at this one on the edge here. So bees are a bit hungry, and this frame was full, but they ate out this section. Now there's a bit more honey coming in and they're filling it in again. But if we harvested this frame right now, you'd get a few bees down the cells. I'm not seeing any now, but you could have bees down the cells. So this wasn't a problem for the bees because there was still enough space there. But what we found is if a bee was down the cell, when it moved back into cell-formed position, the moving parts could catch a leg or a wing. And we didn't like that because they'd be stuck there. So what we did is we put a V-shaped gap here. So imagine every cell has parts that actually don't meet anymore. And the bees have to bridge that area with their wax, which then when the cells move, it provides that wax line breaks, and then when it comes back, it's not there to catch the bee's knees, if you like. So that wax moving out of the way, at worst you might get a bee stuck in its own wax there, and the other bees can come and help it out. So really important for me in the inventing journey was to make this way as gentle as possible, and I confidently say that this harvesting method, I harm a lot less bees than I did in conventional harvesting practices.
Great, thanks, Seeds. Now Clinton, who's a bit of a regular with us, recently harvested from a frame, was fully capped at the time, but the water content was 21%. Is the honey okay?
Okay, that question depends on how many colony forming units there are of yeast in the honey. So the reason why you'll hear commercial beekeepers saying it's got to be 18% or less is sometimes you'll find that it will be fine at 21% and keep for a very long time in the jar, but sometimes not, depending on those colony forming units in the honey. So the lower the moisture content, the less likely fermentation is to occur. So you've harvested when it's nice and capped like this, but even so, the bees perhaps haven't done a great job of bringing that moisture content down into that 18% range, which would be the ideal keep forever range of the honey. So what we need to think about then is this a problem for us? And for me and my family, no, it gets consumed so quickly, it doesn't really matter. If you want to keep it longer and you're worried about fermentation, then keep it in the fridge, or you can make honey mead out of it even if it's just started to turn. So if it's starting to get bubbles and tasting fermented, people often call it baker's honey because they will still cook with it, but it's not very nice on its own. So commercial operators will tend to mix that with other honeys that have a low moisture content and get an average water content that's low enough for the jars to then keep forever, and they often pasteurize it as well, which will stop it going candied by heating it, but that kills a lot of the beautiful micronutrients and the benefits of honey in terms of its medicinal properties and all of that. So we just like to keep it as it is. 21% could go either way. You may find after some time fermentation occurs. Keep it in the fridge and it probably won't be a problem. But sometimes bees don't do a great job of reducing that moisture content even though they put the capping on. Typical in the more humid climates.
Great. Actually, we've got someone who's tuned in from the Lakewood Fermentation Club. They may know about things like that.
Very nice. I like the sound of this.
Yeah.
Can I come and taste the wares?
Exactly. Well, their question is, why do you recommend homeowners have their own beehive?
Oh, well, you're asking the right person. So, I mean, I think bees are just absolutely amazing. Like, especially Apis mellifera, the European honeybee. The humans have taken them all around the world wherever they've gone because they are such extreme little pollinators. This hive here could pollinate 50 million flowers in a day, and that is an amazing service to humans in their agriculture and food production, but they also make this amazing thing we call honey, so it's such a win-win on that level. And yes, we've got a lot of native pollinators that are super important too, and that's why we plant these flower gardens, and that's why we do a lot of fundraising and the pollinator houses and so on. But Apis mellifera, the European honeybee, is super important to humans and their agricultural pursuits. So you're both doing this amazing service as a beekeeper, keeping Apis mellifera going and making sure there's enough beekeepers and enough bees to keep the whole system going. But also you get this sweet reward which everyone loves, and it's just great to share around. And an amazing piece of learning as well. And I think humans really do yearn to have a level of farming, whether it be a backyard little garden plot or whatever it is, to produce their own food is something that a lot of us love to do. And a beehive has this ability to take up not much space at all. In fact, some people just have a couple of these on their balcony in a high-rise or on a rooftop in the city, and that is a very small use of space that can produce a real amount of produce. And often in the cities you'll get an incredible amount and a longer flowering season and more varieties of honey. The city beekeepers do boast. So it's a beautiful pursuit multifaceted, with endless learning, amazing produce, and a great service of pollination to your surrounding gardens.
Now, see, we're harvesting honey and you sort of can't even see any bees. So a few people are saying, so where are all the bees?
I'll come and have a look around here.
Zoom in on
So
it for you.
you can see that the bees are just coming in and out. Now, we talked about hot weather. It's not hot here. If it was really hot, we'd probably see a big bee beard here and bees covering the whole front of the hive potentially. And that's them clearing out of the way to get adequate ventilation. Here, it's actually a pretty cool day, and you can see the bees just chilling, and we're harvesting honey from the hive, and they really haven't changed what they're doing. You can see them in the window here, just going about their business. A lot of people say, no, it's fake, no, it's fake, and we covered that last week, but here we are, bees are going in and out, and the honey's just pouring out in what seems like a magic trick.
Cedar, if you were planning on moving your hive and moving location of your house, what's the best way to move the hive with the bees?
So moving the hive is an interesting thing to think about, and there's different ways you can move them depending on what you are trying to achieve. So one of the main pieces of things to understand is the way that bees can geolocate to the spot. If we move this hive even to here, the forager bees coming back will fly back to this spot and ball up on the plants or the ground going, where's my hive, where's my hive? Because they know the difference between here and here. Their geolocating is incredible. They have amazing powers of observation, and they can fly out of the hive and take in landmarks and know exactly where their hive is. So when you move a hive, you have to take that into account. So the old method is you move it far enough away so the bees can't remember or see their surroundings, keep it there for a month, and then move it back to where you want your hive. Now, that method's a bit annoying because you've got a double move to do, and let's say you just wanted to move it across your yard or a few doors down. Then there's a technique that we usually use, which is a reorientation technique, where we simply will pick up the hive of a morning before the foragers have gone out, move it across the yard, then we will put a leafy branch or tie an old t-shirt in front of the hive, something so that when the forager bees come racing out of the hive enthusiastically, they smash into the obstacle and they go, something's different, something's changed, and that causes the forager bees to reorientate to the new spot. And that works for 95% of the bees, but you get 5% still returning to the old spot. You can either let them go into a different hive if there's hives present, or you could put a cardboard box there or any kind of box, collect those foragers and ferry them across each day or two to the new location. And that's far easier to me than putting it on the back of a truck and moving it 10 kilometres, waiting a month and then moving it back. However, if you're moving more than 6 miles, 10 kilometres, you can just go ahead, block them up in the early morning before they're flying and move them. Making sure you're strapping the hive down, take the gabled roof off, you've got a good strap around the whole hive. A couple of people lift that onto your pickup, strap it down and move the hive in the early morning where it's nice and hot. Take out the tray in the bottom so you get plenty of ventilation. I have actually just about killed hives from lack of oxygen while transporting them, learning that lesson in my early 20s.
So you were talking before about making a feeder for the bees, and I think you mentioned salt. A couple of people asking, does it matter what salt? Table salt, Himalayan rock salt?
So Fred Dunn did a great video called Bees Need Minerals. He's one of the experts on our Beekeeper.org online course. If you want an amazing online course, then have a look at the Beekeeper.org. It's free to try, also an amazing fundraiser for the bees. Now, Fred Dunn, one of the experts on there, said he made this video testing out whether Himalayan rock salt was better than conventional salt, and he found that it didn't matter. Now, he also did experiments where he put a water feeder here, a water feeder here, a water feeder there, and kept moving the position of the salty water, and the bees would follow the salty water. They like minerals, and they'll go after salty water before fresh water. They'll certainly go after fresh water too, but if you're making a little bee feeder, especially if you're trying to get bees to feed at a specific spot. If you don't like where they're currently going in your outdoor shower or wherever it is, pinch of salt there, dripping tap, and you'll find that this will be the preferred place for the bees to come and collect their water.
So you were talking a little bit about cross comb, and Rick's tuned in, and Rick's got the Flow Hive 2 Plus.
Yep.
And has a couple of frames that have cross chromed, and he's just wondering, could you talk about how to swap out these frames, or what's the best thing to do for that?
Yeah, okay. So we're in the bottom box here. We've just got wooden frames. If you haven't put any foundation in, the bees will usually build off that comb guide, but not always. Sometimes they'll go a bit wonky. Now, if they've just gone along nice, but then gone wonky at one end, you can usually just chip it away and push it back in line. If they're completely cross or it's too hard to manage and it's only honey in there, just cut that comb out, give them another go at drawing straight on the comb guide. Clean up the frame a little bit so there's no pathway for them to follow where they've gone on an angle, and even move that in between two other straight frames. If they've gone completely sideways, then chop out the good sections of comb with the brood, use some rubber bands to hold those sections inside the wooden frame while the bees then connect it to the surrounds. Once you've got them going in the right way, they usually will follow. And we've got some great videos at thebeekeeper.org showing you how to do that with great video training.
Fantastic. We've got someone, Dan Rivers, I'm not sure, and he's saying, I just got a Flow Hive, and it's either today from his mum or for his mum. So I was just saying, welcome Dan to the Flow Hive Club. Thanks, Mum. And so the next question is, can you have one of these hives in a hurricane-prone area?
Okay, so we find that here, actually we did find that here our classic hives that don't have such good telescoping roofs, when we would get 80 kilometres an hour or more up this slope here, we'd find that some roofs, this gabled roof section would blow off. Of course, you've got the inner cover there, so the hive's not exposed yet, but you've lost that weather protection on top. Now, so when we built the Flow Hive 2, we put these roof locks in here. You can then do up and really lock that down. I actually rarely use them. I find because we overlap this more, even when the winds get strong, that it does actually stay on. However, hurricanes are a different level again. And we actually had a cyclone come here, Cyclone Alfred, and we were all pretty worried about it. So what we did is we just tied our hives down. We put some screws in here and we just went over all the hives with a rope, just holding them down to make sure they didn't get blown away in the cyclone. So that's something you can do too, just improvise, tie your hives down if you do have a really big weather event on its way.
Can you just talk a little bit about what the flow frames are made out of and what makes them so flexible?
Okay, so the flow frames are, the core of the flow frame's made out of polypropylene, and what happens and why we chose that is we wanted a substrate that was least reactive with honey as possible. Now if you had metal, then you'd get a really strong metallic taste in your honey. If you have, let me see you can't really use glass, but even glass does have an interaction with what's inside. So everything actually does have an interaction with what's inside, whether it be wood or glass or plastic or what. So what we wanted to choose was the most food grade plastic we could, and that's why we choose polypropylene. It's widely used. It's a very stable plastic. It doesn't react with things. So for instance, it's used for food containers, it's used for chemical containers because it's very stable. And that's why we chose the polypropylene. And now we let's come and have a look at what's going on here. But some people worry that their honey's in contact with plastic, and that's a fair enough concern in the world. But one little piece of reassurance is you can see how the bees coat all of the parts in wax. So your honey is sitting inside a wax pocket within the flow frame. Now, plastic substrates aren't new to beekeeping at all, but what you'll find with other products out there like plastic foundation, they're often not even choosing a food grade plastic, let alone a food grade version of that type of plastic. So do be careful with what you put into your beehive, and we have certainly made sure we're using food grade substances with everything here, BPS, BPA free, to make sure we have the best choice of materials.
Right, now a few people asking where to get Flow Hive, so just tune in to honeyflow.com and it'll direct you to a store. And we don't have a store you can pick up from, but there's lots of information on honeyflow.com about purchasing the hives or contact customer support. Seeds, we've got Karen who's in far north Queensland. Now they're having lots of rain up there at the moment. Karen doesn't have her bees yet, but the Flow Hive is ready to go and all set up. Just wondering, should they wait till after the wet season before getting their bees?
Should they wait till after the wet season? Now that's a great question for local beekeepers in your area. I'm not from your area with the climate. You've got a more monsoonal climate up there. You're in mid-summer. Find out from your local beekeepers, or if you have knowledge of that area, please chime in and help answer that question. But basically, bees are incredibly good. Still a great spot to keep bees. As for whether you should wait a little till after the rain, would be a great question for your local beekeepers.
And it's great. And then we have the other spectrum where people are having temperatures over 40 degrees, Seeds, and they're wondering, should they put shade up?
Okay, shade's always a lovely thing, but it's not essential. Bees are incredible at air conditioning their hive, and you'll see most commercial beekeepers have their hives out in the full sun always. Full sun's always preferred over full shade, but if you could have shade of an afternoon, that would be an ideal scenario in the heat of summer. So you can certainly put up shade. However, bees tend to do better generally if they've got more sun than more shade. So temporary shade could be a nicety, but as said, you can either put this so the vents are at the top by spinning this around, and that way it'll allow ventilation to go up through the screen bottom and into your hive, or you can take the tray out altogether and give your hive maximum ventilation in that heat wave. But generally bees, if they've got adequate ventilation, will be fine even in 40 degrees plus.
Is it easy or hard to get started beekeeping with our kits, say, compared to the Langstroth or other types of beekeeping, beehives?
So we've put a lot of innovation into the hive to make it easier both to get started and to harvest your honey and to look after your bees. So yes, I'm biased, but I think that the Flow Hive is a much better and easier way to start your beekeeping journey, even from a very beginning perspective. And the reason why is because out of the gate, even just setting up and leveling your hive, we have these adjustable feet. Then we have these ant guards, which are a nicety. Then if we go up, we've got this ventilation control, which, as said, we've got a heat wave at the moment, so that's really handy. But this pest management tray is super good for managing things like small hive beetle and also varroa. Now, so that is a really useful tray. Now have a look at this. I've just pulled this tray out, and often people are saying, oh, we got a lot of honey spills into the tray. So I just wanted to show you that yes, we got a couple of drops in this corner, but for the most part, it's a very efficient harvesting method, and the honey is in the jar, and any spills inside the hive, generally the bees are cleaning up and reusing. Then you come up the hive and you've got levels in the side to help you set up your leveling, And then you've, of course, got the windows, which are an incredible piece of learning. And commercial beekeepers that grab a flow hive, usually on their wife's request or something like that, go, why would I need these windows on my hive? Like, I just lift the hive and I know when it's full or not. And then they often come back and say, wow, the windows have been really useful because I can look in and check on the bee numbers and get an early warning to when the hive's in trouble and so on. So the windows are an amazing piece of learning, an amazing observation to know when your hive might need assistance and when not. So that's really different from conventional beekeeping, which is typically just a white box with no windows, not much going on, not much interaction until you actually pull the hive apart. But here we can tell a lot from the outside. The tray tells the story, the rear window view tells the story, the side windows tell a story, and that's extremely helpful in your beekeeping learning journey. Not to mention harvesting actually bypasses shed or a laundry or a dedicated room in your house set up for honey extraction in the conventional way, perhaps a $3,000 extracting spinner, stainless steel benches, decapping knives, scrapers, sieves, buckets, you name it, hot knives, all of that you no longer need to learn about, maintain and keep in your house. So it's a big win on multi-levels. And another benefit that isn't quite so obvious is you're often harvesting different honeys from different frames, and quite often people are getting the blue ribbon prize at the show, and they've done a whole lot of nothing but turn this handle and it's come out perfectly, no need for any sieving or anything. And that's often a blind. People don't know that it's a flow hive, they just choose that honey as the winner because it's often got more flavour, and it's been proven. And in scientific studies, harvesting without all of that conventional processing and mixing produces higher floral notes. So if you love honey and you love to really taste the flavours, and harvesting like this really stands out compared to conventional harvesting.
Bestie's tuning in from Queensland, another Queenslander, and has a brood box with 2 supers on top. And just wondering, with Queensland winter coming up, how much honey should they leave in the hive for the bees to get through winter?
How much honey should you leave in the hive for the bees to get through winter in Queensland?
Yeah.
Whereabouts exactly?
Yeah, it doesn't even, it just says in Queensland.
So if you're on the coast, you likely get flowers all through the winter like we do, and you can leave no honey for them and they'll keep finding flowers. If you're inland a bit further, you'll likely have several months of winter where there isn't any flowers, and in that case you probably only need to leave a few frames for them. Quite different to other parts of the world that get a long snowy winter, and you might need to leave a whole box of honey for the bees to survive through to the following spring.
Great. Cedar, would a chicken coop near a beehive be a no-no?
It can be a really good thing. Now, I have heard of issues where territorial bees stinging chickens, but for the most part, often they get along fine, and you'll find the chickens will eat the small hive beetles if you have them in your area, which is a win.
Great. Gianni just wants to know, and I guess you were talking about it then, Seeds, like why are the flow hives more expensive, say, than just a conventional hive?
So there's a whole lot of reasons why they're more expensive, and you're not really comparing apples for apples too if you're just comparing this to your typical white box hive. Now, we went through it before, but we have a lot of features to help your beekeeping and of course your harvesting. So we've got a whole lot of, and we've got beautiful woodwork compared to conventional hives as well. So if you're getting the Western Red Cedar hives, this wood is incredibly expensive for a reason, and that's it's one of the best woods in the world for this job. People do say, and don't necessarily expect this, but you do get beekeepers saying they've had a Western Red Cedar box for 50 years. You'll never get that out of any other timber type. So that's one reason, and particularly this Western Red Cedar hive. It's very expensive because it is built to last and it is an expensive wood type. you might notice the wood is exceptionally high quality too. We're using what's called the clear shorts, and you'll really find a defect in the wood. Like often when you see Western red cedar, it's full of knots that are sometimes falling out and so on. Extremely high quality pieces of wood here in our hives. And then you go to our flow frames. They're made and manufactured here in Australia to the highest quality, and that has an expense. So we're not here making a stupid margin on our products. We're making a normal margin in terms of running a company, and this is the real cost of creating a high quality product when you have thought through and made everything to as highest quality as we can. So when you compare a flow hive to a conventional hive, it's not apples for apples. You are bypassing a whole extractant room full of equipment, as we were talking about earlier, with your perhaps $3,000 centrifuge like I used to have, your decapping benches, your sieves, your buckets, your hot knives, your scrapers, all of that. Not to mention the space it takes up in your home and the mess and the time and so on. But another thing that's not apparent is you can keep harvesting when you see the honey's full, keeping honey on jars on the shelf instead of stacking boxes. You might see conventional folks using the beehives and they're stacking lots of boxes like this. That has an expense, and maintaining those stickies in the shed and keeping them vermin and wax moth free and all of that has an expense to it. So this does the job of perhaps a multi-stacked conventional hive, because typically you're batch harvesting, you're storing honey on the hive in the field for batch processing rather than storing honey in jars on the shelf whenever you see it full. So there's a lot of things to take into account if you're just purely looking at expense.
Fantastic. Seeds, how does the flow hive go in really cold weather?
So cold weather, bees are incredibly adaptive and resourceful. Now there is arguments in the cold, snowy areas whether you should wrap your hive and add insulation in those times. Some people say no, you want the hive to get cold and cluster, and therefore they won't consume as much honey, and they are more likely to last through to the spring. But one area that's not argued on whether you should insulate your hive in a cold weather area is under the roof. So what I'm talking about there is overwintering. As far as honey harvesting goes, the flow hive, you are harvesting it in the warmer months and it's operating just like you see here. And if you're in Europe saying it won't work here, which is some strange sentiment that started from the very beginning before anyone had seen a flow hive, take some inspiration by Jamie Oliver or Beckham or any of the other people in the UK who are harvesting honey and getting beautiful honey from their flow hives. So we have flow hives all over Europe and it works very well. We have them in North America, we have them in Alaska, very cold climates. They work very well in the cold as well as they do in the heat.
Great. We've got Anna tuning in from Clunes, which is not far from where we are, saying they're having problems with hive beetles, which we all know about. They have the base with the ant guards. They're emptying out lots in the tray most days.
Yep.
Anna's wondering, is it recommended to put diatomaceous earth around the base?
Okay, so some people use diatomaceous earth for hive beetle control. You have to be careful not to expose it to the bees though, because being an insect too, what diatomaceous earth is actually ground up. It's actually ground up old crustaceans, I believe, to form what is very sharp little crystals. To us, it just feels like a powder, but to insects, it gets into the knee joints and in under the wings, and it eventually kills the insect. So just try and use it in a way where the bees aren't going to be in contact with it. Now some people put it in the tray, has issues where if you get a lot of rain driving in the entrance, it'll get wet and then not work. But if you have a look at this tray here, This has been freshly just cleaned out recently, but you can see some hive beetles. So this is generally what we do to help with hive beetles. If you've got our pest management tray, is we put a bit of oil in there and we catch those annoying hive beetles. Super important at the moment in this area. I'm glad you're thinking about it. We really need to lessen the hive beetles. It's become almost more important than managing varroa because even though beekeepers have done a great job of reducing the levels of varroa, I find we're getting a lot of hive losses to the beetles simply because there's a lot of hives dying out in our area, and each hive that dies out is 10,000 more beetles that enter the world when all of those larvae go into the ground. So be super on to your pest management tray. Make sure you're catching those beetles. Use any other beetle traps you want to. There's other ones you can buy that go inside the hive. You can make them out of chuck's cloth like we were showing you a couple of weeks ago. And in fact, this hive here, we could pop the lid and show you that, see if we're catching any beetles with the chuck's cloth. But anything you can do extra to help your hives in our area at the moment from hive beetle attack is an important thing to be doing.
See, Frankie and Poppy are wondering, can you put honey into plastic jars? Can you store it in the plastic jars?
Absolutely. It's very common for honey to be stored in plastic jars. We like the glass jars, but if you want to use plastic jars or plastic teddy bears jars or whatever you like, go for it. It's up to you. Glass just feels nice and higher quality to me as a gift or as a present.
Right, and Gianni just came back, Seeds, on your explanation as to the cost of the flow hive and sort of saying, look, thanks so much for that, it makes so much sense. So thanks for explaining that and thinking maybe they should start with a hybrid hive, which is a cheaper option for people.
Absolutely, we have that cheaper option there for you, which is a bit of a mixture of honeycomb and flow frames in the top, which does lower the price point for you. Now, we did say we were going to use the super lifter. Time's running out, but we'll give you a quick demo of the lifter just to show you how that works. We'll get into a hive over here, and I'm actually going to just put on my bee jacket because when you're opening the hive, of course, you want to protect yourself from the bees. But let's just get into this hive, have a quick look, and show you how this lifter works. Now, the reason why we like to get in there often is to make sure we've got a good laying queen and everything is sweet inside the hive. Making sure it's not getting overrun by the beetles, as we were just talking about, making sure we have a healthy functioning colony. An important thing to do as a beekeeper. Now, I'm going to show you how to light a smoker quickly, and I'm going to cheat. Now this one's already full, so we're going to need to empty that out, because if you've got hard packed garden mulch in there, it's going to be very hard to light. Now what we do is we put it more loosely in there, and there's a few ways to go about this. One way, because our smokers have this inner basket, I'll just show you this other way. If you do have a blowtorch, you can actually start the smoker from the bottom straight through those ventilated holes, or you can light it from the top as you normally see us doing. You can see how that's really lighting up now, and what you can do is often, if you just position that towards the wind, you'll get it lighting up. Now I'm going to go again just to speed this up and really make sure. But that's another way you can light your smoker. When you put it in, you can then puff it, and away you're going with a much often quicker way to ignite your smoker. But don't pack it hard or you'll put the fire out. Now the smoker is there to calm the bees, and also a great tool for moving bees off of the out of the way when you're doing your beekeeping. So what we're going to do is add a little bit of smoke to the front of the hive here, and that will have a calming effect as the bees change mode. Okay, so adding three good puffs in the entrance, right in is what I do, and wait a little while, and that seems quite reliable. You can smoke your hands, you want nice cool smoke coming out. There's a grid here to stop any embers coming out, which is a nice feature of our smokers as well. If I leave that right at the entrance, that will actually give the returning foragers a bit of a whiff of the smoke, which helps them change to a nice calm mood. Now, if you're in a fire ban area, use the garbage bin lid as something to put your smoker down on. You don't want to set fire to the ground and cause a fire. Also pay attention to some of the local regulations, because you may find that there are times of extreme fire danger where you're prohibited from using your smoker as well. So here we've got a nice show actually on this hive of the different types of bee, and even the way a bee starts from an egg and goes through its larvae stage, pupae there down the cell where it's growing its legs and wings, and eventually emerges into the hive as either a worker bee, a queen, or a drone. And they're the three types of bee in a hive. So to open the hive, this is our super lifter. I'm going to run through it and show you how easy it is. It's our latest invention, and we're getting an amazing amount of quite touching feedback because this is a problem solver. Now, I'm going to put this bag out of the way. All I'm going to do is pick up these handles here, right? That's step one, it's written on the handle. You move your hands apart, roll your wrists in, and it should look like that, and that is set up ready to lift your hive. So step two is written on the lower brackets. It goes onto the lower load point screws. Step three is written on the upper ones. Step four is we lift this as the handle. Now that's quite easy to lift, and it's done a lot of work for us, which is chiseling the boxes apart we no longer have to do. Now we can roll it around, and this hive's sunk in the garden, so I have to lift it slightly actually to get our leg down. You've got clickers here to adjust it if you're going a long way down with a 3-stage telescoping leg. Now, what I'm going to do next is roll the hive over so we can start beekeeping. Before I do that, I want to get my hive tool and my frame rest. I may as well bring my box of trinkets a bit closer in case I need a bee brush as well. This is a nice little add actually to your pocket, and that way your hive tool just sticks right onto your pocket like that, which is super nice rather than losing it all the time. Next, all we have to do is actually roll the hive over, which is completely different to the way it's conventionally been done. So super easy to open up and then do your beekeeping without all of what was involved conventionally, which was like chiseling and muscling and awkwardness. So this is saving people's backs. It's really been an amazing thing for a lot of beekeepers. And then you're straight into your hive doing your beekeeping. And the little frame rests go on the side. So this is just a quick demo, and then we're going to close it up again. So that's very quick to do whatever you're doing, requeening, checking the bees. If I want to pull a frame out, then you're always going sideways first like this, the hook under the end bar, and then up we go. And let's just check that we do have a laying queen. Straight away I'm seeing brood here, so I'm happy to have, and I'm seeing young larvae down the cells. Plenty of it. If you look at this area here, give us a thumbs up if you can see the white shining larvae. And that is the baby bees in their caterpillar phase, if you like, before they spin a silk cocoon and go through their metamorphosis, growing their eyes and wings and everything they need to become a worker bee. So I'm satisfied, a laying queen. Got a few male bees, the drones here we were talking about earlier. They're the bigger ones. Give us a thumbs up if you can see that that bee is bigger, or that bee is bigger than the one next to it. There's the drone bee, kind of teddy bear shaped. Eyes are big, touch together in the middle, compared to the worker bee. So we've got worker bee here with pollen baskets on its legs, drone bee here beside it. We've got a few dances going on the comb surface, which is their communication, and amazingly they can communicate an amazing amount of information to the other bees in the dark of the hive. Often not only general direction of forage, but exactly where to go within a few metres. They can actually tell the other bees by dancing and percussing on the comb surface. Okay, we're going to close that up. We've got time for a couple more questions.
Great, Seeds. We've got someone tuning in from the UK, paramotor training. I thought that sounds like your kind of thing.
Paramotor training.
Yeah, you
I
know
used
that.
to do exactly that.
That's what I thought.
Teaching people how to paraglide was my gig, and the paramotors as well. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, paramotors training is, how long does it take for the bees to fill the hive, and then what happens when it's full? What do the bees do?
So when it's full, I'll just finish closing this hive up while we're here. So all we do to close it up is back in the reverse. One really interesting point that people are really loving about the super lifter is you get to put the box back in a very controlled way. So normally you're waddling up with a big heavy thing that might weigh 30 or 40 kilograms. There's nothing you can do apart from just drop it on whatever bees are there. Now, not only do you open it easily, but you can just gently close it, waiting for the bees to get out of the way, using your smoker, using your brush, taking as much time as you need. And you notice it only touched down at the far end and it's slowly closing the gap, and I'm waiting for any bees to get out of the way. I think that one was there from a time before. Out of the way, and there we go. A gentle touchdown. Now we can.
Paramotor.
That's right, gentle landing with our paramotor. Had a great flight a couple of weeks ago, flew way out west here, just gliding. Landed 80 kilometres away from where I started. It was a beautiful afternoon. Now back to the question, which is how long does it take for the bees to produce honey? And that is a very common question that has many answers. Let's take this veil off again. Now, what you'll find is that depending on, well, look at that, we've got a lot of honey there, which is nice. Depending on how many flowers are around and how strong your colony is will directly affect how much and how quickly they'll store honey. So in extreme examples, you find people set up their hive and they're in the middle of spring and everything's going off, and 2 weeks later it's full and they're harvesting honey, and they harvest it all, and then the frames are full again, they harvest it again. Then they harvest every frame and they've already got 100 jars of honey and they're only a month in. Now that's extreme. Generally, it takes a lot longer. Sometimes you might not get any honey at all in that season because things didn't align. Perhaps there was drought, perhaps there was flood, perhaps the flowers didn't produce enough nectar, or your colony wasn't strong enough because there was an issue. Perhaps the queen wasn't laying enough eggs. You name it, some hives just aren't producing. Now, when you have multiple hives, you look at that and go, well, that hive isn't producing, perhaps we need to replace the queen to get some more virile genetics or address an issue. On average, around here, with the kind of dribs and drabs season we have, in spring we could fill a couple of these boxes. We could harvest it all and it would all full again. The rest of the year is a bit hit and miss. The honey will flow in sometimes and not others. So you could say on average each hive we're harvesting all of these frames a couple of times a year. And that's typical for this location. If you're more onto it, making sure you're harvesting as soon as you see it full, you could store a lot more, which is one of the many benefits of the flow hive system.
Great, and Jamie's wanting to know, I think people are probably aware about the bees and beekeeping book that Flo is doing, and he's wondering if you'll be selling signed copies of it.
Signed copies.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
I can sit there signing all day.
Yeah.
So if you haven't heard, we've put a lot of effort into writing a beekeeping book, and thanks to all of those that helped us with that as well. We've now got a Flow Hive's book of bees and beekeeping, which has the story and the invention of the Flow Hive, plus a great beekeeping book in detail, helping you through all of the different stages of beekeeping and troubleshooting, and a lot of QR codes to take you directly to some nice online content from the book as well. So have a look at that. It's now available in stores, and you can order it there, and later, pretty soon.
Yeah, I think it is. I'm not 100% sure about when it's actually...
Pretty soon.
Yeah, pretty soon.
Another few weeks, it'll be available on our website as well. So have a look at that. And a big thank you to all of the people that helped us write that book and make it into the amazing good read, inspiring read, and also it's got amazing pictures from our team here, Ben behind the camera, Jai, my nephew, and my sister Mira, with beautiful photos as well.
Fantastic.
Thanks so much for tuning in.
Are you going to close up the hive seeds?
Yeah, we can close up the hive. So to finish our harvesting, this is the frame we've been harvesting here. So all we're going to do is put the key by taking it back to a 90, out again, then in the top position, because what we want to do is push all of those moving parts down into the cell form position. Again, it's easy to turn back. All of those cells are now pushed back. A little tip is leave that for a minute or two, because sometimes wax can be a bit bouncy. If you were just to turn it really quickly, maybe some of the parts are going to bounce back up. It'll cause disruption to the flow path later. And that's it. We can now go and put our little caps back in, which I've left in our caddy over here, and pack up our harvesting. And another lid as well. But we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and if we waited a bit longer, we would get 7 of these 300ml jars of honey. The one frame is about 3 kilograms of honey from one single frame. So if we harvested all of these, this is our smallest size box, we would have 18 kilograms honey, or a bucket full of honey, which is extraordinary to think. A little insect and one bee might only produce a quarter of a teaspoon of honey in its entire little foraging life. Flying fast, beating its wings at 240 cycles a second, flying up to 10 kilometres, bringing back almost its own body weight in honey. Honey is certainly something to be revered, and it's always been revered through the ages, and it's just a beautiful thing to be able to appreciate all the different flavours that come in from all the flowers around. Now you can leave that on the edge of a jar if you want to, or you can enjoy the spoils. And all we're doing now is putting our little caps back in the bottom like we've just done. That key comes out, we put that back in. We take away our jars of honey, and the very shelf is the cover, the back of the hive. Don't forget the other windows, because you don't want the sun shining in and heating up your hive unnecessarily. And the other window here with our beautiful artwork on it showing the life cycle of the bee, and the little key access cover goes right in there, and that's it. We are done harvesting. Thank you so much for all of your great questions. Best of luck with your beekeeping. If you're in our local area, stay onto the beetles at the moment. They are a complete menace. Make sure you are using your pest management tray with a bit of oil in it. Clean it out regularly every 3 weeks or so, making sure it's doing a great job of trapping the beetles. Use other methods as well, if you can, to reduce the beetle numbers. And of course, managing the mites periodically is an important thing to do and a new thing for us here in Australia. Thanks for tuning in. Same time next week. See you then.